All right, what's up, agency owners? Jason Swenk here, and have another amazing show for you, an amazing guest, where we're going to talk about how do you know what to charge and charging what you're worth and budgeting and making sure that you're extremely profitable. I have a great person on that's going to get into this, so let's jump into the show. Hey, welcome to the show.
Jason, it's a pleasure. Wonderful to see you.
Yeah, awesome to have you on. So tell us who you are and what do you do?
Absolutely. So I'm Stephen Brown, and I am the president of Cookerly PR. We're based in Atlanta, so we're a one city agency that represents national campaigns. So we do a lot of national and global work, but we are strictly based in one city and have our staff of about 22 here that do crisis work and creative work, depending on which client you've got.
Awesome. Well, let's get into it because we were talking kind of in the pre-show. A lot of my mastermind members when they come in, or a lot of agencies when I chat with them, I find out they're not charging enough, or they're not. They're really bad at budgeting, and they're not profitable. And we were talking. You guys are extremely profitable, which congrats on that. So, what are some things that you've learned over the years in order to do that right?
Sure. Well, the naive me, the one that worked at a bunch of multinationals over the years, was always like, oh, just do good work, and the money will follow. And I learned my lessons over the years, and under the tutelage of Carol Cookerly at our firm, learned a lot about charging what you're worth and actually stepping back and asking all the hard questions to determine if you are uh, budgeting the right way for a project. For instance, we do some work that is project based, fixed fee based, that is very predictable. It could be a media relations or social media campaign where you know you're doing it for a certain amount of time. Then we have those other things that just come out of nowhere. The oil spill, the having to help a company out of a crisis. And those are drop everything and charge crisis rates type of opportunities. And so we really have to look at the project at hand and determine with the staff that we have, the people we have, is that something that we can fit into our portfolio, or is it something that we need to be charging extra, even have extra people for, to be able to handle it? So it's been very important for us to get our financial house in order on any type of initiative that we do.
How do a lot of people are saying, like, well, how do I figure out what I'm worth and what I should actually be charging? Well, how do you guys do it?
Sure. Well, there's some sense of benchmarking. We have our ways of finding out what others in the industry are spending. As I was telling you at one point, we know a young lady in our own city that's charging way too little. And I think to a certain extent, you don't want to bring down the whole vibe of your industry, the entire collective bargaining power of your industry by charging too little. You definitely want to have a very good hourly rate that you could actually make a good profit margin off of. And you want to have a variety of people at different spectrums. So you may have the senior most person, the senior counsel, all the way down to some more junior folks that might do some of the monitoring, might do some of the research, some of the early forms of writing. So you have to make sure you've got a spectrum of that in an agency. I guess we'd be considered a mid-sized agency, and in that you have to have all those different areas represented with a price affixed to each.
What are some things that you guys picked up along the years about budgeting? Because I remember, I've chatted with people, and I remember how we did budgeting before we were got a little bit smarter. I would just look at the bank account.
Absolutely. I
So,
think we found that we don't want to be the kind of agency that's the training wheels for somebody. We are better off when someone has worked with agencies before, maybe didn't get everything they wanted to, but they got the very notion that working with an agency was going to be able to help them. It was just the wrong agency. So with us, we usually say, like, do we have a minimum amount? Because to a certain extent, you're going to work just as hard for that one that is coming in under your minimum, as the ones that are actually paying you what it really takes to put a team together. We're usually, telling our clients that, hey, to be able to reserve a team here that's going to work all the time on your behalf, it's really going to be a certain amount, and that's going to be able to get you those 2 to 3 people that are going to be consistently reachable, that are going to be very knowledgeable about your business on an ongoing basis. whereas something else that's just sort of coming in over the transom, as they say, that is something that we've not known the person before and are just starting to sort of suss out what it might be that they want to do. They might come in and say, well, we only have this much to spend. And then sometimes during, low economic times, you might be willing to take something like that in. But I would say before you're willing to do that, think twice about like, is it worthy of your firm's portfolio, and is it willing to spend what it takes to really get the job done?
Yeah, one of the things I always train my salespeople on, I'd always say, hey, you got to ask the budget. And a lot of times when I was before the pandemic, I was in New York speaking in front of like 800 agency owners, and I asked them, I said, how many people asked for the budget? In the first meeting, and there was about 50% of the room. I said, how many actually get it? And about another half of that, so a quarter actually would get it. So that meant 75% never actually knew the budget. And I would just be like, you got to ask the budget and then come up with a way in order to be like, what are you trying to stay around? And I always would do it like, are you trying to stay around $1 billion, $1 million, 100,000, and just work my way down in order to figure it out. And usually at 99% of the time it would work. And then, like I chatted with Berkshire Hathaway. I think they're still in Atlanta, but many years ago, maybe like 20 years ago, they called us up for a website, and I'd never asked the budget up to that point. And I pitched them a website for like 20 grand, and they laughed me out of the office because they were expecting 300K. So then every time after that, I was like, what's your budget?
Yeah, there's nothing worse than finding out that you've really undersold a project. We found that out one time where we put together what we were defining as branding versus what someone else was referring to as branding, and ours was sort of a early messaging, early branding, sort of several workshops, and we were competing against two others that had extended it into a 6 month long process with more focus groups than you could ever imagine, and that prospect wanted to hear that. They wanted it to take a long time and involve lots and lots and lots of arduous activity. So we're used to a lot of public relations clients want to move fast, and we want to fast track the research to get enough to be dangerous in some cases. And but it is interesting. One of the first questions we do have to ask in a prospecting call is that, do you have a range in mind? Do you have a budget in mind? Most of us were applauded or got into this public relations field because we were great communicators or brainstormers or very verbal or great writers. It isn't because necessarily we were good at calling the question for money. So that is one of the things that Carol Cokerley has taught us all, that we really have to really know how the business mechanics work for a company. And in doing so, you really have to know who's paying for this, how much are they willing to, and how much is it worth to preserve the wealth of your company to have a public relations firm build your brand, handle your brand well. It's one thing to just say, hey, let's contact the Wall Street Journal for you. It's another one to say, hey, let's contact the Wall Street Journal with these precautions, and
Mm-hmm.
knowing that we're contacting them for a story and it could go south. We're going to actually work with you to find the 7 reasons why that story could be great and help you make sure that those 3 reasons why that story could go south don't happen. And so we're definitely having to mitigate risk and determine that we want to take an endeavor forward based on our knowledge and based on research. So that definitely takes a lot longer than somebody else who's just like, oh, yeah, I'm going to just call the person I know and try it out. So
Yeah.
it's a whole different approach to PR for sure.
What what's a in kind of switching topics just a little bit outside of budgeting? I mean, you guys have worked with a lot of big companies, and a lot of people want to know, how did you start getting the bigger companies? I with me, it was we targeted one that, or we targeted like five. We got one, and then used that to get another one. Like, what worked for you guys in order to get some of the big brands?
Sure. I think part of it is just doing consistent, great work. It starts leading to the things that you really love. I've always wanted to work on campaigns, companies that were launching something, and you start launching a few things that maybe aren't that renowned, aren't that big a deal. And then all of a sudden you're finding yourself launching in the big leagues. So launching Mercedes cars, launching new products for some of our clients, the Georgia Pacifics or the Novellises of the world, where there's a lot bigger stakes. and a lot bigger environment to do so, where you're actually going to be, hey, could we launch this new car in Las Vegas? Could we launch this new aluminum recycling program at the Kentucky Derby? And all of a sudden, you're kind of taking it up a few notches. So I think you do have to start off by going a little small, making sure that you can get that right with that, that local restaurant before you are doing something chain wide for a
Yeah.
chain that has hundreds and hundreds of locations. So I think you just start with your passion, start small, and it will start laddering up. People will start seeing what you did for a smaller brand and start saying, hey, could you pilot that for our bigger brand? That works well. Hey, could you do that for our whole chain? And so that's the way we've seen a lot of our areas grow, and people coming back to us for more. We had a really great event last night where we launched our Novellis client, uh, did an event to be the official recycling partner for State Farm Arena here in Atlanta, with the Atlanta Hawks. And it was one of those things where one of our clients was like, "Wow, this is the first time I was in Sports Illustrated." He'd been an athlete growing up, and he's like, "I'm in there for an aluminum, cup that's going to be at arenas." But the notion that that's just a Monday night for us to be able to have a great announcement like that for a great company like that is very exciting. And we have some folks off this week at a electric vehicle show to be able to just show off some fantastic new innovations. And it becomes really nice when all of a sudden you've got people in multiple cities. One's launching the Global Water Center in Nashville, while the other folks are in Los Angeles, and while we're doing some events in Atlanta. So it becomes very exciting to be in multiple places launching major
What
activities.
last question I have for you is, as you're working with these big brands and you're building the team, how do you guys make sure that your deliverables are consistent?
Our company is rich in process. So I think unlike a lot of places where I've been before, where it's sort of depending on who's in charge, it could be a lot of different ways. We have a very rigorous process here. We have what's called our scheduling update, and every Monday morning we get together at 10:15 precisely, and we go through everything that's in the shop. Every activity has initials by it, so everybody is very accountable to what's being done. Then at the end of the month, for all of our clients, we send them something called an account summary. And that's got every item, every reporter we're contacting, every story that's in the works, every campaign that's being put together in extreme detail so that no one ever has to ask, hey, what is that agency getting us?
Mm-hmm.
So for us, we have a very, very rigorous process along the way. The status calls where we're pretty rigorous about our agendas. And so that helps us be able to make sure that we're always moving our clients forward. And it's working well for us. Sometimes you're in the brainstorm mode where it's blue skies and any idea is great. But when we're in that scheduling update or we're in that account summary world, we are very linear, very, very process oriented.
Very cool. Awesome. Well, this has all been great, Stephen. Is there anything I didn't ask you that you think would benefit the audience?
Now, I would just say that those of us in PR, ad agencies, marketing firms, we're all looking for those folks that have great writing skills. We're looking for those folks that have great media relations, social media, marketing, research, content analytics. And I would just say that you want to look for people in your firm that possess a lot of different side passions as well. So as we've been looking for people lately, it's been folks who have all the aforementioned skills or some of those in great abundance, but it's also folks who have just a lot of interest in life. We've got folks here who are sports experts and movie aficionados and voracious readers, voracious athletes. And that's just very important to be able to pull off what we do for companies day in, day out. And so I think that's the greatest thing is like recruiting this next generation is going to require people who have the direct skills, but also have a lot of side passions to bring to those great brainstorms and those great campaigns.
Awesome. What's the agency website people can go and check out the agency?
Sure. So you can find Cookerly PR at cookerly.com. So it's COOKERLY.com. Carol Cookerly is our founder. So that's where the name came from. And we're 30 something years in business and look forward to working with a lot of new folks.
Awesome. Well, thanks so much for coming on the show. And if you guys enjoyed this episode and you would not want to miss out on any other ones, make sure you guys subscribe so you hear the amazing guests that we have lined up. And if you want to be around amazing agency owners, I mean, literally the best of the best, where they're constantly sharing what's working and what's not working and being able to see the things you cannot see, make sure you go to digitalagencyelite.com. This is our agency mastermind that might just be able to help you out and might be getting you to the next mountain summit that you need. So go there now. And until next time, have a swank day.